had a good friend of mine when I was in Franklin and served in 2 churches in Franklin. They used to do a thing. John Franklin Howard, he had 2 churches too, so we often talked. They used to do a thing right dead in the middle of summer in July. They would do Christmas in July. And that month was one of the highest peak months in his churches for worship. We all love Christmas, don't we? Well, when I was little, I told you guys before, living in the Weaver apartments down in Greensboro, we had so many kids. And I remember there was this thing that was kind of circulating among us. And how kids love to call each other names. Y'all don't do that, I don't guess. Well, we did. And we did it frequently. And we did it a lot. And, we used to call them put-downs. And so we got this thing that was just kind of shared among us over and over. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names can never hurt me. Who comes up with that kind of stuff? Where's that? It hurts, doesn't it? Yeah. Names and words hurt sometimes. And see, here's the thing is, if you base wisdom on Scripture, nothing could be farther from the truth. And sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. We've talked about some of this before, and if it's a little repeat, it's okay. We need to be reminded of some of this stuff over and over. One of the great pieces of wisdom literature, and wisdom literature is literally the book of Psalms, Ecclesiastes, and Proverbs. And Proverbs has a wonderful passage. You might want to circle this, mark it down, remember it, however you want to deal with it. Proverbs 18:21. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it, this is the important word, those who love it, in other words, who have a strong emotional attachment to it and with it, will eat its fruit. Now, to me, there's 2 points that we can take from this morning. First of all, the tongue, not the organ, but the words that come out of our mouth, has either life-giving on the one hand, where we bless, speak well of, where we bless people, or on the other hand is life-robbing and is fatal and destructive. And that's it. That's the options. There are no other options. Let that soak in for just a moment this morning. And the second part of it is that we are going, whether we speak it or whether we hear it, we are going to eat of its fruit. We are going to take it into our lives. We are going to absorb it into our systems. And there's going to be good or bad consequences from that. This is unavoidable because of the world that we live in. And we live literally in a world of words. Say that fast 3 times. They're either spoken to us or we see them written in front of us. Now, for the most part, words come in personal contacts that we have with some of the people who are most close to us and whom we associate with most of the time. Their family or friends or their co-workers or their neighbors or their church brothers and sisters. But they're also in public places where, we shop with people or we go to athletic contests with people, where we bank, etc., and etc. It's really wherever 2 or 3 are gathered. Some of the words that come to us are solicited. We ask for them. We initiate the conversations. A lot of it unsolicited. People just hoist it onto us. Some of the language that we incur and we hear comes to us a little less personal. It can come to us through radio and TV. It can come to us through the internet and all those electronic devices that we all have, and all those wonderful social networking places that we have, like Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and a host of other things. And the point is simply this. Negative words are finding more and more places to be launched from and to land on in this day and time that we live in right now. More and more opportunities. The term civil debate has just about vanished from our culture, hasn't it? There is no more civil debate among us. And one of the worst perpetrators of negativity is the news media. It's this fertile ground for launching negativity. And to me, it's almost humorous. The news media will spend approximately, and listen, I don't watch news stuff anymore. I quit years ago. Every now and again, I might watch a portion of news. But I no longer watch news from the beginning of it to the end of it. I just don't do that anymore. But news has a way of setting up this pattern where they do one of two things. And they will talk about negative stuff for 98% of the time, and they'll give you one little 5-minute clip at the end of it. Maybe just one little 5-minute clip at the end of it that's sort of a positive story. Or they won't even give you the 5-minute clip. They're going to give you 100% of this negative news reporting for either a half hour or hour, however long you watch it, whether it's local or national. And then it doesn't really matter. They will close it out with something like this. From all of us here at XYZ News, have a good evening. Really? You just spent an hour bombarding my ears and my mind and my heart with nothing but murder and mayhem, kidnapping, human trafficking, crime, political espionage or political intrigue where some political person's made this huge offense, a virus that can't be stopped, and a hurricane that's going to wipe out the face of the earth. And then you say, have a good evening. Yeah, I'll sleep good tonight on that one. See, most of us are going to encounter negativity and destructive words through sarcastic, discouraging, and critical comments made personally to us. Or sometimes it comes through what I call a delivery service, a third person. Well, Pastor, have you heard? Did you know so-and-so thinks? Third-party destructive words. And see, when you receive those negative comments, when you eat of that kind of stuff, it's like a balloon with a tiny puncture hole in it. Your heart, after receiving that enough times, just like a leaky balloon, eventually, given enough time and enough comments, negative comments that come your way, will find itself completely deflated. Can I get a testimony? It is a proven fact that recurrent exposure to negative words has a viral effect on us. It spreads through all of our receivership and processing faculties inside our body, our minds, our hearts, and our psyches, and our emotions. And given enough time, with enough repeat performances, and we begin to make this sort of consent in our souls with all of that negativity that we've been hearing. Well, maybe I am stupid. Maybe I am fat. Maybe I am an underachiever. Maybe there's nothing good about it. And see, once we begin to sort of, make those kind of personal consents with the stuff that we've been receiving and eating from, we will probably bypass these wonderful divine opportunities that God has worked so hard to place us in and to put us in, where we can absolutely demonstrate, if you will, His giftedness within every single one of us. Oh, how far we have fallen as believers when that occurs. I want to give you one verse And this one has been my go-to many a time when I am so discouraged and I'm so despairing. And you might want to write this down. It's Psalm 16:3. Just jot this down, and you go and pick it up and you read it sometime. See what it does for you. But this has been my oasis in the desert. This is God talking. I want you to carefully listen to what God has to say about us. As for the saints, if you're a saint, raise your hand today. Folks, the Scriptures, Old and New Testament, make it clear. If you believe in God, you're a saint. How many saints do we have in here today? All right, thank you. Thank you. As for the saints who are in the land, they are the glorious ones in whom I have put my delight. God looks at you and He says, there are my glorious ones. But see, having taken in negativity, we eat its fruit. And see, we are what we eat. And our world will grow darker and darker and darker. But we cannot forget that the tongue, our words, have life-giving power as well. Proverbs 16:24, another piece of wisdom, says this: pleasant words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. Positive, edifying words are absolutely environment-altering, climate-changing agents coming out of the mouths of God's glorious ones. The most powerful words we will say or hear each week are the ones that we say to ourselves and the ones that we say to other people. Please understand this. There are no harmless conversations. But it's up to us, as God's glorious ones, to take ownership and stewardship of our language, to use pleasant words towards each other, ones that are sweet to the soul and bring healing and refreshment to the bones. It's obvious that Paul thought that this was an important part of the community at Ephesus. And although the letter may be turned to the church at Ephesus, there were churches. There were several churches, perhaps a dozen or more churches in the Ephesus region. And here's a wonderful thing, is they didn't see themselves as Methodist or Baptist or Lutheran Episcopalians. They were just all part of the body. That's why it's called to the church at Ephesus. And Paul was concerned, if you read the passage just above where Sue had read, you'll see that there was some very immature thinking and behaviors going on. And so Paul has this understanding that the words that we say have both an effect on the speaker and on the listener. And that's why he says, speaking the truth in love, we will grow up. Everybody say grow up. Up into the head of Him who is the head, that is Christ. He believed what we say to each other and what we take in from each other can have a maturing effect on us as the people of God, as the glorious ones. What is so amazing to me is that even in the most challenging situations and circumstances, the most contentious kinds of environments you can imagine, our Lord Jesus was wonderful with speaking truth in love. And if there is no love in truth, it ain't true. I believe His Spirit can do the same thing for us today. Because you see, the Spirit of Him who raised Him from the dead lives in us. That same life-giving, resurrection kind of Spirit lives in us, the glorious ones. John 8 tells a very familiar story to us. If you want to turn there, that's fine. You don't have to. But we all know this story so well. It's the woman caught in the act of adultery. And see, we've read that so many times. I've read that so many times. I had to just put the brakes on, shift it down to another gear, and slow down and read through that whole story again. So, bear with me as I kind of take us through this. First of all, how do you get caught in the act of adultery? I never thought about that. And so as I'm thinking about that and reading about that, I begin to realize, in our world, sexuality is blatant. It's all over the place. It's public. Not so much in the time of Jesus. So if you're going to trap somebody in adultery, you would have to follow them. You would have to spy on them. And you would have to dig up a family history on them. This woman was caught in the act of adultery. Now, picture this with me. Jesus is there, that John tells us, and there's a crowd of people, and he has them all sit down. He's going to teach them. Jesus himself sits down. And then the accusers of the woman caught in the act of adultery bring her in front of them. John tells us they make her stand before the group. Everyone is sitting, the crowd is sitting, Jesus is sitting, and the accusers and the adulterous woman are standing. Hold that in your mind, that picture in your mind for a second. This is the height of humiliation. And what these accusers are doing is they intend to entrap Jesus with a double binding question. And so they say to him, let me quote John here, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commands us to stone such women. What do you say?" Say. Words. They're everywhere. Even the Son of God has to use them. See, if he says no, then he's a lawbreaker. And see, if he says yes, then he's in trouble with Rome. Because at this point in time, Rome has taken away from the Jews the right to put a death penalty on anyone. And just for the record, the accusers were absolutely in error. Because if you turn to Leviticus 20:10 or Deuteronomy 22, all they say about adultery is that the adulterer, male or female, will be put to death. It says nothing about stoning. Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me. The text says that he was riding Jesus in the dirt. Now remember, the crowd's sitting down, apart from him. Jesus is sitting down. The only people standing up are the accusers and the adulterous woman. And Jesus is riding in the dirt. Now, some older manuscripts tell us this, or they have it worded this way, that he was listing all of the accusers, listing all of their secret sins in the sand. The people sitting down can't see. But the people standing up, the accusers and the woman, they can see what Jesus is writing. And as he finishes the last testimony of the accusers in the dirt, the words ring out, "What do you say?" The one among you without sin, let him cast the first stone. Truth. Truth in love. Lovely truth. Jesus didn't condemn her because he knew he would be condemned for her. And for you. And for me. And for this whole world. As freed men and women, it seems to me that we ought to have some lovely truth to share with this world.